Hello everybody, Levi Clay here, back again for another Q&A session. This time answering the question, which came to me via message on YouTube, asking what strings I use, but more specifically asking do I rate expensive strings, so coated strings, any sort of, the Elixir type strings or the Ernie Ball Cobalts or things like that. What are my thoughts on those? So I thought I'd pull out my string drawer, because I have a drawer full of strings. You can see here. Because I, believe it or not, go through quite a lot of strings. What you'll notice though is there isn't a consistent string type in here, string gauge, or even type throughout the range. So I do use D'Addario strings exclusively. D'Addario have been absolutely wonderful to me in my career the last few years, and more importantly I love their strings. I played other strings for quite a while, and my opinion actually is that as long as you're spending a reasonable amount on strings, you're going to get something that's of quality. So if you're not buying $2 strings from a local pawn shop, I see things like that, then you would expect your Ernie Ball Slinkies and your D'Addario XLs and your Roto Sounds and things like that. You'd expect a similar level of quality from them. What I can tell you though is that what I have experienced from different brands of strings is different levels of reactivity with your sweat, the composition of your sweat. So what I find is that certain brands of coated strings, for example, for a while I was playing the what were the Ernie Ball coated strings, the ones that they released before the Cobalts. Let's have a look. These titanium ones, the titanium coated strings. I played the coated titanium strings for a while, and I found that they weren't lasting quite as long as the regular Ernie Balls that I was using at the time. And what I took from that is that there was something in my sweat that was causing the string life to be shorter. So for the longest time I've been using the D'Addario nickel wound XLs. 10 to 46, it's different gauges for different things. You see a big box of 10 to 52s here, which I use for guitars tuned to drop D, though I also have some 9s and some 9.5s, because I'm running quite low on strings. Depending on what I'm recording, depending on what I'm doing, I'll use different strings for that. But my go-to gauge is usually 10 to 46 for standard tuning. These are prototype acoustic strings. You'll see D'Addario silver-plated Gypsy Jazz strings, D'Addario Pro Steels for my pedal steel, lots of individual strings as well, like 52s, which I use on my 7 strings. I have and 66s, bags of 66s for my low A string. Chromes, which are the flat wounds. These are 12 to 52s. I like those quite a lot. Nylon strings for my the Jerry Reed style stuff that I like to play. And I'm sure these are 10 to 59s, 7 string sets. I don't actually use these for 7 strings. What I use these for is for my fretless, and I throw the 10 away and I use the lower set for so what would that be, 13 to 59 for the fretless. My favourite strings are, without question, the D'Addario NY XLs. Now you'll see polarising opinions on these in the same way that you see polarising opinions on Elixirs. I'm not a fan of Elixir strings. It's not because they're not good, it's because they don't work for me. When I've played Elixirs, I can tell that they're coated strings. They feel different under my fingers, and while they sound better for longer, they sound good for longer, they don't sound as good at the start of the string's life as a regular set of Ernie Balls or D'Addarios or whatever, to my ears. And for me, they didn't last as long as I'd like them to for the price. The NYXLs, these strings last me absolutely ages. Now, I'm not saying to you that these strings will last you absolutely ages. What I'm saying to you is, if you are having problems with other brands of strings and them not lasting you as long as you'd like them to, it's worth giving the NYXLs a go and seeing if they work for your sweat composition. I know that sounds really nerdy, maybe even paranoid, but I really think that that's the case. These do last for me, so I use those for recording, and you know they feel like you can abuse them a bit more, bend them a bit further. But for the most part, you know, I do still have plenty of the regular XLs. Actually, I forgot to mention, these are the balanced tension sets, 10 to 46 balanced tension. So they're slightly different gauges. Let's have a look. Compared to the 10 to 46s. Let's have a look. So it's got 13.5. So the regular sets are 10, 13, 17, 26, 36, 46, and the balanced tensions are 10, 13.5, 17, 25, 34, and 46. I do prefer the feel of the balanced tensions, they work for me. But yeah, plenty of other strings kicking around in here. Got these more pedal steel strings, because, you know, always need pedal steel strings. And proof, you know, I have some Rotor Sounds in here and some Dean Markley strings, which, you know, they're all fine, they all get used. Yeah, and lots of Rotor Sound singles, 17s, which is for G string. So, what are my thoughts on expensive strings? Well, ultimately, it's always going to depend on how long strings last for you. There's no hiding from the fact that NYXLs are not cheap. In fact, let me have a look. How much are D'Addario NYXLs? NYXL. So you're looking at about £12.50 a set of strings versus £6 or £7. So they're almost twice the price. So it would be logical to say that these strings need to last you twice as long for them to be worth the cost. Do they last twice as long? That, I guess, I would have to run some tests on. But for me, I like the way they sound, I like the way they feel, and most importantly, as a player, you have to be happy with your instrument to really feel in yourself that you sound good when you're playing. And these help in that for me. So if I'm having a bad day playing, if I put some NYXLs on my guitar, I don't know, psychologically I feel better about the guitar. But that doesn't, as I say, stop me using the regular XLs, nickel wound XLs, 10 to 52s for drop D guitars. I always use those. So there's definitely no obvious answer. I'm not falling into the marketing hype and saying these strings are better because these are the best strings. There's no such thing as the best strings, and there's no such thing as worth with strings, or at least objective worth. It's always going to be about what works for you. You will definitely see people say that the NYXLs don't last very long for them, and I'm not going to call them liars. I'm sure that there are people that have a particularly corrosive sweat that eats through NYXLs, and if you're eating through the NYXLs, you know, try the Cobalt Ernie Ball strings, or try the Elixirs. You know, there are other options out there. You have to find the right strings for you, is ultimately what I'm getting at. So Pete, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for sending it in. If anybody else has any questions, you can always drop them in the comments box below, messages on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of those good things. You can also subscribe to my channel by clicking the button in the bottom left. You can check me out on Patreon by clicking the button up in the top right, and you can check out 2 of my other videos there and there. Supporting this channel is amazing, a great way of helping me continue doing what I do, and I do appreciate the support. So, peace out guys, much love, and hopefully you got something from this. It's been my pleasure to serve and entertain. Back soon. Bye.